We recording now?
We are.
All right, great, we're recording. Hi everybody, my name is Tom Timbrooks, and let's start the slideshow so you can see. That's a much better picture of me than this is right here. I mean, this is what I really look like, and this is what Photoshop says I look like. I think I'm a great looking guy both ways, but let's use the Photoshop image, okay? Anyways, so my name is Thomas W. Timbrooks, and I am running for the United States House of Representatives, representing Oregon's 6th Congressional District in 2026 for the Republican Party. I want to make Oregon's 6th Congressional District America's greatest congressional district, and that's right there, make Oregon's 6th Congressional District America's greatest congressional district, okay? So, first of all, Happy New Year's to everybody. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's. The studio was closed over the holidays, and so, went ahead and, took a little break and everything. So, what happened over just last week was Donald Trump, President of the United States of America, Donald Trump went down to Venezuela and sort of invited Nicolas Maduro to spend some time in an American prison, along with, I suppose, his wife is here with him also. And for me, I think that's an absolutely amazing and wonderful thing, and I am completely elated that President of the United States, Donald Trump, went ahead and did that. I think it's a good thing. It's a very proactive thing. And most of the people in Venezuela, in fact, almost all of the people in Venezuela, have the same feeling about that. They're very, very happy about that. And I got a slide here. Let me see. This one right here, the slide, okay? Americans for Trump. Hilarious. The Venezuelans share the perfect. To those who say that the United States is only interested in our oil, I ask those people, what do you think the Russians and Chinese wanted? The recipe for arepas. And I don't know what an arepas is, but it sounds pretty tasty. I think I would like to go ahead and find a place where I can get an arepas and, get one of those. It's like empanadas. I never knew what an empanada was until somebody said, yeah, I'm going to have an empanada. And I was like, what's an empanada? And they'll look at empanada. Well, it's something that's cooked and delicious, okay? It is a delicious cooked thing. Arepas, I'll give those a try. It sounds pretty tasty, So, and then if Russia and China, maybe they do want the recipe for arepas, but I'm pretty sure they just wanted the oil. So, get back to this. So, here's the thing about this. I was going to talk about something else, but I decided, this is a more fitting thing. It's a little bit more important, and the whole reason I want to talk about this is because as a United States representative, it's very important for the representative to consider how modern events, how current events can help to shape public policy, can help to shape national policy, but most of all, how these current events can affect the things that are happening in the representative's district, congressional district. And with us being in Oregon's 6th congressional district, I was wondering how can this that's happening in Venezuela affect our congressional district? And I kind of figured out a way that what's happening here can help Oregon, can help us in our congressional district, and I'm gonna get to that towards the end. But first, I want to talk about, the whole thing with Donald Trump. So, by the way, today I am wearing overalls, and, that's basically my way of saying, wearing overalls and a floral shirt, that is my way of saying to the world, I really don't care if the planet opens up and swallows me whole. So that's why I'm wearing such a casual outfit. But I guarantee you, if you elect me, if I become elected and go to Washington, D.C., suit and tie. If I go to Congress, it'll be suit and tie. I'll be wearing much nicer clothes. But right now, I'm in Oregon, and there's actually a game that people play. This game is called, is that person homeless or is that person just from Oregon? And in my case, I have a home, so I'm just from Oregon. But yeah, that's actually a game that people play. When they come here, people who are not from Oregon, they come to Oregon and they play this game, homeless or from Oregon. Is that, which one is it? So I was just notified that is actually a game that outsiders play. And I don't know if they play it in Washington also. I assume they do, because Washington and Oregon, very similar political climates. But anyways, so the Monroe or Donroe Doctrine and how Oregon can rebuild the ocean. From Venezuela to the world's oceans, power doctrine and stewardship, how U.S. policy, overfishing, and Oregon's future are connected. And I told you, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to connect them, okay? And the Monroe Doctrine is, for those of you who don't know, the Monroe Doctrine was created in 1823 by President Monroe. And basically what Monroe was saying back then is Europe needs to practice influence in Europe. Europe needs to stop practicing influence in North, South, and Central America. North, South, and Central America are perfectly fine without European influence. And apparently the Europeans were trying to, the people, like France, Spain, England, and like that, they were over here trying to create governments and republics and do all kinds of things, and have their dominance and their influence over here. And President Monroe looked at this and said, no, that's not going to happen. So the Monroe Doctrine said, Europe, back off. This is America, M-R-K-A. Go back to your little smelly European country there. We don't need you anymore. If these are limitations, so go back, okay? And so what Donald Trump did was he looked at the Monroe Doctrine and said, okay, the Monroe Doctrine told Europe to back off, but here we have Asia and Russia both influencing things that are happening in this hemisphere. And we really don't need Asia and Russia influencing things that happen in this hemisphere. So what the president has done is he's made his own little spin on the Monroe Doctrine, and he calls it the Donroe Doctrine. That's where that's from. He's actually kind of a clever president. I think I'm going to give Donald Trump, on a scale of 1 to 10, probably about an 8.5 on the clever scale, because the guy is clever. But he's managing a country and everything. So I'd say 8.5 on the clever scale, because I have seen people who are more clever than him, less clever, but he's a very clever person. So I'm going to give him an 8.5 on the clever scale. I know he would give himself on a scale of 1 to 10 probably an 11 or a 15 on the clever scale. But it's an outsider. I'm an outsider. I think I can judge him a little more fairly than he can judge himself. Okay. So anyways, this is how I'm going to connect everything. Okay, what happened in Venezuela, the facts, not the spin, how Venezuelans are reacting to the ground and abroad, the Monroe Doctrine and Trump's Donroe Doctrine, how to avoid another Iraq in Venezuela, what the Donroe Doctrine might mean for China's fishing fleet, overfishing and worst-case scenarios in the oceans, and a manage and rebuild path that can create Oregon jobs. And that's like I said, my whole objective is to figure out a way how all of this that's happening can help Oregon to create prosperity in Oregon due to current events, okay? What POTUS did in Venezuela, the basic facts: in early January 2026, U.S. forces carried out a large coordinated strike in Caracas to capture the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, Cielo Flores, who, from what I understand, is a very nice person. I don't know her personally, but I bet she cooks up a mean arapa, whatever that arapas is. The operation reportedly involved 150 aircraft and elite U.S. Special Operations units, including electronic warfare jets that disabled Venezuela's defenses. And those electronic warfare airplanes, I was in the Marine Corps from 1984 to 1988, and I am familiar with the electronic warfare airplanes that were used. They were actually built in the 1960s and early 1970s, and they are still in use, which, I mean, that really says a lot for these little airplanes. These things are pretty amazing, and they work really well, and apparently they're still running. So yeah, these are great little airplanes. Anyways, Maduro and Flores were transported to New York and, having appeared in the U.S. federal court, facing charges including narco-terrorism, drug trafficking, money laundering. Both pleaded not guilty. I mean, why not? What do they have to lose? Acting President Delcy Rodriguez has assumed interim leadership in Caracas. And human and military costs of the operation: Venezuelan authorities report around 24 Venezuelan officers killed, plus dozens of Cuban personnel stationed in Venezuela. U.S. officials estimate roughly 75 total killed in the raid, including Venezuelan and Cuban security forces and some civilians. No U.S. fatalities, but several Americans wounded. Venezuela declared a week of national mourning for its fallen personnel. Cuba declared 2 days. United Nations officials and multiple governments have raised concerns about legality, sovereignty, and precedent under international law. And, okay, what happened to Maduro? Maduro has been arraigned in New York City under longstanding U.S. indictments accusing him of running a drug trafficking enterprise and conspiring with armed groups. His legal team is arguing that his capture was an illegal abduction, raising possible extradition and sovereignty issues in court. The U.S. administration says the operation was justified under counter-narcotics and national security authorities, as well as a renewed hemispheric policy, the Donroe Doctrine. And this is, you know, like I said before, it's just Donald Trump's spin on the Monroe Doctrine. And, you know, I really like how Donald Trump is looking at actual U.S. policy. I mean, U.S. policy that has stood for a very long time, and he's looking at this U.S. policy. And the fact that he has knowledge and a good understanding of U.S. policy tells me that he's doing his job effectively. So if you look at a lot of the politicians that are in Congress, some of them will be asked, you know, what's Article 5 of the Constitution? And I think this was, I can't remember the name of it, but anyway, one of the politicians, one of the representatives was asked, what's Article 5 of the Constitution? And she says, oh, well, I don't know, I'll have to get back with you on that. And it's like, how can you be a member of the House of Representatives and not know that Article 5 of the Constitution is the process for amending the Constitution? I mean, how can you not know that? You know, and so the fact that President Trump is able to look at American policy, international policy, foreign policy, domestic policy, all these policies, and form a strategy based on the policies that have existed for a very long time, had been, you know, time tested and proven to be effective. The fact that he can do that tells me that he's a very good president, and he's a very good leader, and he is the type of person that we need in his position. And so this is a very good thing, and I'm very, very happy that he understands American foreign and domestic policy well enough to understand how to create a strategy based on standing effective policy. So, okay, so inside Venezuela, reactions range from anger to fear to relief and cautious hope. In Caracas, large pro-government marches denounce the operation as kidnapping and violation of sovereignty. Pro-Maduro groups and armed collectives have reportedly intimidated or hunted perceived Trump U.S. supporters, heightening tensions at border crossings and in some opposition-leaning areas. Venezuelans expressed joy and relief at Maduro's removal, calling it a chance for a fresh start. Online, some viral celebration videos were later exposed as old or AI-generated footage showing how information warfare is shaping the perception. So essentially what happened there is, I mean, you're watching on television, well, I don't have a television. I don't actually watch television. I've got a television and I use it for like movies and stuff like that. But I watch, I get my news from the internet, from YouTube and a couple other places. And of course, I use ChatGPT to create my presentations. And the reason I like ChatGPT is it doesn't have a conservative or liberal-leaning bias. It really works. ChatGPT works really hard to present only the facts that have been established. And these are the facts that have been established. Now, of course, if you watch the news, what you will see on the news is thousands, tens of thousands of Venezuelans in Caracas jumping around in celebration on the streets, and in Madrid, in Lisbon, all across America. And of course, all across America, you have the left wing, the extreme liberals standing in the streets saying, return Maduro, you shouldn't have done this. You're, saying Trump is a Nazi and a fascist and everything for doing all this stuff. And it's kind of crazy to me how there was a No Kings rally last year at this time, No Kings rally. And the same people who were saying, no kings are now saying replace the dictator. I mean, Maduro is a known dictator. The guy was not democratically elected. The president that was democratically elected was overthrown by Maduro and his forces. So Maduro is a dictator, and he is the closest thing that you'll find to a fascist in the Americas, North, South, and Central America. But ChatGPT is where I get a lot of my information and create my presentations. So. The ChatGPT is trying very hard to present the information as just the factual stuff, and of course, some of the footage that you see is going to be AI generated that shows a very positive effect of the removal of Maduro, but. Mostly the people who live in Venezuela, mostly the people who live all over the world, who have relatives in Venezuela, are very happy, very pleased about what has happened in Venezuela. Most of the people who are unhappy about it are the American white liberals. And it's just... The white liberals in America seem to be very, very opposed to Donald Trump. We have Trump derangement syndrome, so naturally, a lot of people who are have a liberal bias, they're gonna be against what Donald Trump is doing. Not so much because what he's doing wrong, it's just what they don't like Donald Trump. Okay, so if you suspect Donald Trump of being a Nazi and a fascist and everything, then of course you're going to be biased against anything he does or says. But what I have seen online and on the news is that mostly what he did is being taken as very positive. People are very happy, very positive about what Donald Trump is doing. So I'm going to go with that. But the presentation was created by ChatGPT and myself, and I kind of want to go along the lines of what ChatGPT is saying, because I don't want to make any claims that later get disproven as being just artificial intelligence creating a presentation. Okay, so I'm going to go with what ChatGPT says, just to be safe, that most of what's happening is positive, and some of the stuff may be AI produced, and that there are people in Venezuela who are loyal to Maduro that are protesting, but most of the people in Venezuela are not loyal to Maduro, and they like the idea of his dictatorship being taken down. So I'm going to just go with that. Okay, so Venezuelan communities in places like Donroe, Florida, or Venezuela, and other U.S. cities held rallies celebrating Maduro's capture, praising Trump's actions against socialism and dictatorship. Many exiles see this as justice and a chance to rebuild Venezuela after years of economic collapse and repression. At the same time, there is unease about U.S. control over Venezuelan oil exports and revenues going forward, and the risk that Venezuelans themselves may have limited say in choosing their next leadership and policy path. And this is a perfectly natural thing for anybody to be worried about. The United States is going into a foreign country, and the United States is taking down the government that is in there. And, killer clowns from outer space. Go on Facebook and look for Gary Busey, the actor Gary Busey. He says things on, I've always liked Gary Busey as an actor. I'm old. I remember Gary Busey as an actor when he was young and vibrant, and the things that he did. He was a terrific actor, and now he gives presentations on Facebook, and he wears a Killer Clowns from Outer Space hat. So in support of Gary Busey, I think he's still a terrific entertainer, still has a lot of potential as an actor in spite of his limitations due to him having a stroke at one time. But I still love Gary Busey. I think he's a great actor. So, hey, Gary, we love you, man. So, anyways, sorry, getting back to the thing here. I wanted to talk about the fascist thing, the whole fascist dictator thing. Socialism, and I've covered this before. I talked about this before on a previous presentation. Socialism. What socialism does, it's a nationalization of all private property. There is no private property under socialism. There's only government property. The government owns everything. The government controls the means of production. That is the definition of socialism. Now, when you have, there's a train going by. You're not imagining things. There is a train going by, and it's honking its horn. Okay. When you have socialism, many people, in fact, most people, are going to want to keep some kind of personal property, a barbecue, a tool set, just something. They're going to want to keep this just because this is mine. I want to keep it. So in order for socialism to work, all private property has to be nationalized. All private property has to be accounted for and controlled by the government. In order for the government to control all private property, the government has to have the ability to collect all information on all citizens, no matter who that citizen is, no matter what the property is. If you have an oscilloscope at home, the government wants to know you have an oscilloscope, okay? And so what this kind of government is a fascist government. Okay, and the definition, well, a definition of a fascist government is a political system that exchanges loyalty and indoctrination for political favors. Essentially, if you want the government to do something for you, well, you have to do something for the government, or you have to be able to do something for the government. And if you become completely indoctrinated in government policy, and if you are completely loyal to the government, then the government will do things for you. The government will allow you to drive a car. The government will allow you to have a barbecue in your backyard. Okay, so this is how fascism is required to keep socialism going. If you're going to have a socialist economy, you will have to have a fascist government to keep that socialist economy going. So, you know, that's why, you know, people are like, well, he was a socialist. He wasn't a dictator, he was a socialist. Well, if you are a socialist, you have to be a dictator, you have to be a fascist, because that's the only way that a socialist economy can work, is if you have a fascist government collecting all information, in control of everything that is owned by anybody. Okay, so that's where that's going. So, the Monroe Doctrine, the original idea announced in 1823 by President James Monroe, the core principles: no new European colonization in the Western Hemisphere. European powers should not interfere in the affairs of independent American states. In exchange, the U.S. would stay out of European great power conflicts, initially more defensive and declaratory than aggressive or interventionist. But it was a policy, and because it is a standing American policy, it can be used by the President of the United States. The Donroe Doctrine, Trump's modern spin. President Trump has explicitly framed recent actions, including the 2026 Venezuela strike, as part of a revived Monroe Doctrine, branded the Donroe Doctrine. Key elements in this reinterpretation: the United States claims a right to prevent hostile regimes and non-Western powers like Russia, China, Iran, etc., from gaining strategic footholds in the Americas, a kind of Trump corollary. It's not warning outsiders to stay away, but actively reshaping governments and controlling key resources like oil in the hemisphere. Supporters call this strong leadership and defense of the hemisphere. Critics call it rank imperialism and a dangerous expansion of U.S. power beyond international legal norms. And I just want to say something about this with what we're talking about, Iran. This is actually helping Iran. Now, I think probably about a month ago, I talked about how Donald Trump's policies are helping people in Mexico by taking drug money away from the cartels. The cartels control the government in Mexico. If you take away their money, then you take away their control. And by closing the American border and stopping the drug trade, President Trump is allowing the people in Mexico to retake control of their government. Now, the same thing is happening in Iran. Without financial support, Iran cannot control its people. And the people of Iran have been controlled since 1979 after this Islamic takeover. Now, don't take what I just said as being hostile towards Islam. I am not hostile towards Islam. I'm not an Islamophobe. What I'm saying is the particular government that took over in Iran it's called a theocracy. Everything in Iran is run according to Islamic doctrine, Islamic code, Sharia law. The people before this had a democracy. They were very happy with the democracy. A lot of good things were happening. Very progressive. Women had the right to vote. Women could go to school. There were female doctors, lawyers, architects, like that. There were a lot of professional women in Iran doing a lot of professional, wonderful things. with the Islamic takeover of the government in 1979, women had to start wearing burqas. They could no longer go outside without a man. They didn't have the right to vote or the right to do a lot of things. So it's really been a repressive dictatorship since then. But now that the money has been cut off, a lot of people in Iran are protesting the government. And some of it's actually been shown. I saw a video clip just yesterday where you have a person, and this person has a sticker, and the sticker says Donald Trump Street. And he just slaps that sticker up on the wall. It says Donald Trump Street. So good things are actually happening for the people of Iran because of what Donald Trump is doing. So I mean, I'm not a citizen of Iran. I can't really judge what's happening in Iran. All I can do is I can see what is coming out of Iran, and I can say it appears that what Trump is doing has a positive effect in Iran because the people of Iran see themselves as empowered. They know that Trump is going to support them as long as they are working towards creating a democratic republic. And this is a good thing. It's good for Iran, it's good for the world, it's good for everybody. So I really support, it's another reason I really support what Donald Trump is saying, okay? So, or what he's doing. So, now, learning from Iraq, what went wrong there? Because here's the thing. Yes, there are celebrations in Caracas. There are celebrations throughout the world. But back in 2000, 2001, I think, when George Bush, when he went into Iraq, there were a lot of celebrations happening there because the dictator there was being taken down. They tore down his statues, his sign, all this stuff. There were a lot of celebrations. And then there were a lot of problems that happened. And the reason that the problem happened is because America made some mistakes on how to transition from a dictatorship to a democracy. And so as a representative of the United States Congress, one of the things I said to the government's purpose is to shape national policy. And America's national policy needs to be shaped in a way that ensures what happens in Venezuela is not the same thing that happened in Iraq. We have to look at the failures of our policy in Iraq to figure out what to do in Venezuela. And that's the next part of my presentation here. I'm going to be talking about what we should do in Venezuela that we didn't do in Iraq, okay? So learning from Iraq, what went wrong there? Total regime teardown, disbanding Iraq's army and the Ba'ath Party created hundreds of thousands of unemployed armed men, fueling insurgency and later ISIS. Weak early planning for governance, power vacuums, unclear authority, and slow restoration of basic services eroded public support. And perceived victor's justice. Trials and purges were seen by many Iraqis as sectarian or externally imposed, not neutral justice. Economic mismanagement, reconstruction funds often bypassed local economies, feeding corruption and resentment. And there were a lot of bad things that happened over there. And oh my God, I just thought about it. There was something where Iraqi prisoners were brought into really brutal prisons and they were treated very, very badly. And there is this person who wrote a book called, what is it, The Lucifer Effect, Zimbardi. This guy is the same person who performed the the prison experiment, the Stanford Prison Experiment. Look up Stanford Prison Experiment and look up Lucifer Effect. It's an absolutely brilliant book. I read it. I believe it was 2005, 2006 when it came out. Absolutely brilliant book, and it outlines exactly what happened in Iraq and why and how it's related to the Stanford prison experiment. Absolutely brilliant book, brilliant author. Everybody should watch that. But yeah, that's the kind of thing we want to avoid in Venezuela. So avoiding another Iraq, and the principles for a better path. Inclusive political transition involve opposition, civil society, and nonviolent Chavista sectors in a broad Venezuelan-led dialogue rather than installing a narrow U.S. chosen coalition. Should have done that in Iraq, didn't. Big mistake. Reform, don't erase security forces. They are in control right now. The people respect them. All they need to do is vet, retrain, professionalize the military and police, prosecute specific abusers, but avoid mass unemployment of trained armed personnel. Early rule of law and justice mechanisms, establish transparent, independent transitional justice, truth commissions, hybrid courts, etc., to balance accountability and reconciliation. Didn't do any of that in Iraq. Should have. Big regret. Fast, visible economic relief, prioritize electricity, fuel, food supply, and wages, especially in poor communities, to build legitimacy. Information transparency, support independent media and local voices to prevent propaganda vacuums that extremists can fill. Very, very important stuff to consider. And these are things that really should have been considered before we went into Iraq. A lot of the things that happened in Iraq were due to military people doing things, but they were also the President of the United States saying, I want this, I want this. The military people who actually took over, they actually had a really good grip on what was happening, but politicians in Washington kind of messed that up. So I think that President Trump will have learned from Iraq, and I know that he's familiar with the mistakes that happened in Iraq. He's going to listen to his military advisors, his political advisors, his civil advisors. Pete Hegseth is a very knowledgeable person. Tulsi Gabbard, National Intelligence Director, very knowledgeable and understanding person. I know that Trump is going to listen to them. He should listen to them, and we'll find out from there exactly what happens. But these are all things that we should have done in Iraq. Hopefully we will have learned our lesson. But one thing Congress and congressional representatives really need to do is ensure that America's national policy directed towards Venezuela reflects an understanding of what happened in Iraq and how mistakes were made and how we need to avoid those same mistakes. And so that's what, if I were in Washington as a member of the House of Representatives, this would be the kind of thing that I would be ensuring happens, that American policy reflects an understanding of what happened in Iraq and how not to repeat those mistakes. So how the Donroe Doctrine could potentially shape Venezuela's future. Under Trump's stated framing, the U.S. sees control of Venezuelan oil flows as strategic asset. U.S. claims a leading role in steering Venezuela's political transition and limiting Russian and Chinese influence. The risk, if Venezuelans perceive the new order as made in Mar-a-Lago, not made in Caracas, it can fuel insurgency and long-term instability. The opportunity, use this leverage to support genuinely free elections, anti-corruption reforms, and human rights instead of just resource extraction. Okay, so that's what I'm sure they're going to go in that direction. I hope they do. And I really hope that, our representative to Congress does this kind of thing, but I don't think that that's going to happen from us. And I just recently watched something, Andrea Salinas, who is our representative to Washington. And like I say, a wonderful person, terrific person. She really cares a lot about Oregon and the Oregon people. I'm not saying anything terrible about her. This week, after all this happened this week, she announced instead of talking about how she's going to help shape national policy and help the transition of government down in Venezuela, she announced that she has been included in some kind of a caucus within Congress for equality. And of course, this means LGBTQ plus whatever equality. And I don't know what that means. I don't care what that means. What I see is that's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. It's just a complete waste. We have a lot of very important things happening inside the United States and some very important things happening outside the United States. I think the last thing that we need in Congress is some kind of equality caucus, and I think the last thing that a congressional representative needs to concern himself or herself with is some kind of LGBTQ plus equality caucus inside of Congress. I mean, there are a lot of things that we need to get done, and I think this is just a huge waste of time. But once again, I'm not a member of Congress right now. If I were a member of Congress, I would be concerned more with national policy inside and outside than just the liberal policy here. So, anyways. From land to sea, China's distant water fishing fleet. And this is where I try to put everything together. China operates the world's largest distant water fishing fleet, perhaps about 30,000 vessels active worldwide. Chinese vessels account for up to 44% of visible global fishing activity, 30% of high seas fishing hours in some analyses. These fleets operate near Latin America, West Africa, and Pacific, often just outside or sometimes inside other countries' EEZs, which is their economic zones. Okay, documented concerns overfishing of key species like squid near Argentina. Human rights abuses on board some vessels. We know that they're basically prison camps. The prisoners in China are being put in there. This is how they do their prison time, is doing these ships, okay? Going dark by turning off tracking systems. Fishing vessels have GPS devices so that they can be monitored, and these fishing vessels very often turn off those devices. They go into another country's economic zone and do their fishing. It's against international law. So, could the Donroe Doctrine target China's overfishing? Trump's Donroe framing says the U.S. will stop hostile external powers from exploiting Western Hemisphere. In theory, Washington could frame China's high seas and near EEZ fishing in the Americas as a security and sovereignty threat, not just an environmental problem. Possible tools consistent with law, the security cooperation with coastal states, radar patrol boats, drones, sanctions on companies engaged in illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing, import restrictions on seafood tied to abusive practices, but direct U.S. military action against Chinese vessels in international waters would risk violating maritime law, escalation with nuclear power, and alienating Latin American partners wary of U.S. interventionism. So we're not going to use the military, but there are other methods that we could use. The state of the world's fisheries today. Global capture fisheries, roughly 92 million tons per year, fairly stable since the 1980s. Aquaculture, fishing, farming has now overtaken wild capture as the main source of aquatic animal protein. According to the FAO's 2025 assessment, 64.5% of marine fish stocks are fished at biologically sustainable levels. 35% are overfished, and the share has been rising over decades. Where science-based management is strong, like the Northeast Pacific, more than 90% of stocks can be sustainably fished. So that's a good thing for us, okay? So the worst case scenario, and I did some research into finding out what could happen at present rates of overfishing. If harmful trends continue, overfishing plus climate stress plus pollution plus weak governance, more regional fisheries collapse, especially in poor tropical countries. Hundreds of millions face increased food insecurity and micronutrient deficiencies where fish is a primary protein source. Loss of fish disrupts ocean ecosystems, the squid, forage fish, like that, affecting whales, seabirds, and commercially important predators. One of the things I said a couple weeks ago on my report is that sharks have been around since before there was life on land. Okay. They have seen, I think, 3 or 4 mass extinction events and have not gone extinct. Because of our overfishing in the oceans, it is very possible that sharks could go extinct. So this is a very important thing to understand. And America's national policy needs to be shaped in a way that appreciates the fact that overfishing could potentially cause the demise of a species of animal that has been around since before life existed on land. Okay, so this is a very, very important thing. Economic shocks feed migration instability and conflict, especially where fishing is a core livelihood. Over time, this becomes a national security issue, not just an environmental one. The key point here is we're not talking about no fish by 2048 as a fixed date. We're talking about a rising risk curve that we can flatten or accelerate by policy choices. So America's national policy needs to appreciate the fact that overfishing is a risk. The manage and rebuild path global principle, science-based catch limits, set quotas based on stock assessments, adjust annually, strong monitoring and enforcement, AIS tracking, satellite surveillance, ports, state controls, habitat protection and restoration, protect spawning grounds and nursery habitats, tackle bottom trawling in sensitive areas, targeted aquaculture expansion, shellfish and seaweed that improve water quality and reduce pressure on wild stocks, align subsidies with sustainability, implement the World Trade Organization agreement on fisheries subsidies to phase out subsidies that fuel overfishing. These same principles are an opportunity for Oregon's blue economy. Oregon's ocean economy, where we are now, Oregon's seafood processing industry had about 950 to 1,050 employees in 2044-25, spread across 40 employers. Employment has dipped below 1,000 for the first time since 2004. Oregon has a growing but underdeveloped blue economy compared to Washington and Alaska. Marine aquaculture in Oregon is currently small-scale, focused on shellfish and some seaweed operations. Translation, we have all the ingredients, coastline ports, science workers, but we're leaving blue economy jobs on the table. So Oregon's manage and rebuild job opportunities, habitat restoration and coastal resilience, keep forest restoration, estuary rehabilitation, removal of derelict fishing gear, coastal engineering for living shorelines, sustainable mariculture expansion, shellfish farming, oysters, clams, mussels, and seaweed aquaculture that sequesters carbon and cleans water. Land-based recirculating systems for fin fish where appropriate, science monitoring enforcement tech, use Oregon's tech talent to develop drones, sensors, AI tools, and data platforms for tracking fishing effort and ecosystem health locally and globally. Value-added processing and branding. Keep more of the value chain in Oregon, filleting, canning, freezing, specialty products. Brand Oregon as a source of verified sustainable seafood, leveraging global demand for traceable, responsible products. And that's just a lot of jobs that are, for Oregon. How this fits in my campaign narrative. Venezuela shows how great, Venezuela shows how great powers can use doctrine and force to shape the hemisphere for good or ill. China's fishing fleet shows the power isn't only about tanks, it's also about who controls food and resources at sea. Overfishing is a slow motion crisis that can be managed or ignored. Oregon can lead by example, managing marine resources responsibly, building blue jobs economy that restores ecosystems instead of stripping them, showing how engineering data and practical stewardship can solve problems rather than just arguing about them. So the closing comment, the same mindset that toppled a dictator for oil can be used to bully or build. I choose to build. Rebuilding oceans, rebuilding food security, rebuilding opportunities starting right here on the Oregon coast. So that's how I'm spinning all of this to help Oregon, because like I said before, the purpose of Congress, America's Congress, the House of Representatives, one of the purposes is to shape national policy. Another is to bring federal dollars to the state so that the state can build its infrastructure, develop jobs, housing, food, and fuel. So that's what I would be doing if I were in the House of Representatives now. Anyways, that's the idea there. So let me go on. I have some other stuff to talk about here, and these are my 10 big things. But this is something I really wanted to talk about. Terrorists are not misrepresenting Quran. It is clearly written in Quran that non-Muslims must be killed. Secularists who defend Islam have never studied the Quran. Islam is the root cause of terrorism. This is not something I support. I do not support whatever this person is saying. This is absolutely wrong, and I want this type of rhetoric to be just taken away. Remove this from your understanding of Islam as a religion. Okay, so I want to show you something here. This is a Quran. This is my personal Quran. It was given to me by an imam down at the Salem Islam Center. And I've been doing a lot of research, as you can see with all the notes I've been taking, been doing a lot of research on the Quran. And one of the things that's being misquoted a lot is about beating your wife. Beating your wife. It's in 434, okay? 434 in the Quran. And people are saying that passage 434 in the Quran says it's perfectly acceptable for a person to beat his wife, okay? And here, I guess I can read. Yeah, I can see it with these. This is 434, which is the misquoted part of the Quran. I'm going to read it to you. It's husbands as providers and protectors. Remember, this was written about 1,500 years ago, 1,400 years ago. So understand, times have changed. The Quran has not changed. Times were different back then. So Men are the caretakers of women, as men have been provisioned by God over women and tasked with supporting them financially. And righteous women are devoted, obedient, and when alone, protective of what God has entrusted them with. And I'm assuming children, the house, and things of that nature. And if you sense ill conduct from your woman, advise them first. If they persist, do not share their beds. But if they still persist, then discipline them gently. But if they change their ways, do not be unjust to them. Surely God is most high, all great. It says discipline them gently. Now, if your child does something, you discipline your child gently. Stop that. Don't do that. Bad little child, right? And I imagine if your wife is, back then, your wife is throwing things at you, she's had a terrible day and she's taking it out on you, you just, stop that now. Bring the reality. It's not saying to take your wife into the street and beat her to death with a stick. Okay, the Quran does not say that kind of thing. I've looked through the Quran. You can tell I've done my research here. So the Quran does not say that kind of thing. So anytime you see this kind of rhetoric on the internet, just don't listen to it. Try to do your due diligence. Perform your due diligence. Like I said, I'm an engineer. I perform my due diligence. That's what engineers do. We perform our due diligence. Okay, so when you hear that rhetoric, just don't believe it. Go do a Google search. Just do a Google search, and Google will tell you a lot of different things about the Quran. The Quran, it's actually a very good book. I've been reading it and finding there's a lot of really good stuff in here, okay? Now, for this right here, another thing that you will hear, you will kill non-Muslims to receive 72 virgins in heaven, Quran 9:111. Okay, and I've got that marked right here. And here, I'm going to take these glasses off. I better use my actual reading glasses here. Quran 9:111. God has indeed purchased from the believers their lives and wealth in exchange for paradise. They fight in the cause of God and kill or are killed. This is a true promise binding on him in the Torah, the Gospel, and the Quran, and whose promise is truer than God's. So rejoice in the exchange you have made with him. That is truly the ultimate triumph. Okay, so 9:111 doesn't say what this thing is saying that it says. Okay, so perform your due diligence and you'll see. And I say this other one, 2:217. You will kill anyone who leaves Islam. Okay, once again, the Quran does not say that. Okay, the Quran does say 2:217. They ask you, O prophet, about fighting in the sacred months. Say, fighting during these months is a great sin, but hindering others from the path of God, rejecting him, and expelling the worshipers from the sacred mosques is a greater sin in the sight of God. For persecution is far worse than killing. And they will not stop fighting you until they turn you away from your faith if they can. And whoever among you renounces their own faith and dies a disbeliever, their deeds will become void in this life and in the hereafter. It is they who will be the residents of the fire. They will be there forever. Okay, so that's what the Quran actually says. So nothing like You will kill anyone who leaves Islam. You will behead non-Muslims. Doesn't say that in the Quran. You will kill and be killed for Allah. Doesn't say that in the Quran. You will terrorize non-Muslims. The Quran does not say that. Steal from non-Muslims. The whole chapter 8 of the Quran deals with the spoils of war. So, I mean, if you want to talk about the spoils of war, okay. I mean, the spoils of war are just something that have been happening ever since human beings have been waging war against each other. There's absolutely no reason to make Muslims into some kind of criminal for appreciating, getting the spoils of war. Okay, so lie to strengthen Islam. That is absolute BS. In fact, there is a part in the Quran where, let me see, it is 16:5. The Quran's 16:5. Let me see if I can find that for you. 16:5. I can't. There it is, right there. 16:105, right here. Okay, 16:105. No one fabricates lies except those who disbelieve in God's revelations, and it is they who are the true liars. So, the whole thing is just BS. Okay? Don't believe it. Don't listen. Okay, get a Quran. Go to a Muslim center. Get yourself a Quran. Talk to an imam. If you had a question about the Holy Bible, the Christian Bible, you would go to a church, you would get yourself a Bible, and you would say, hey, according to the Bible, where does it say that? And you would read it and find out what the Bible actually says. Okay? The Islamic faith is a beautiful old religion. More than 1 billion people on earth worship the Islamic faith. It's a terrific faith. Read the Quran, look at the Quran, do a Google search, do just a minimal amount of research at least, and you will find that all the stuff that you see online, the Quran says this, the Quran says that, the Quran says all these things, BS. The Quran doesn't say that. Do your research, okay? So, Anyways, back to my little presentation here. I want to say God bless our men and women of ICE. Now, something happened just this week, just in fact, I think yesterday, the day before yesterday, where somebody got shot. Some ICE agents shot some woman. This woman was trying to run over the ICE agents, and the reason she was trying to run over the ICE agents is because the rhetoric online got her believing that the ICE agents are evil, bad people, and they need to be opposed. Don't do that. Okay. Let me tell you a story. What happened to me a long time ago, I think it was like 1987. I was in the Marine Corps and I was going to college. Something you can do. When you're in the military, your college is free. You can go to college as much as you want. The books are free, the tuition is free and all that. So I was going to college. I went onto a college campus to get a book so that I could take my courses. And while I was in the bookstore, some young girl behind me, I heard her saying, "Baby killer. Baby killer, baby killer, hey, baby killer," like that, right? And it didn't even register in my mind that she was talking to me. But yeah, she was talking to me. And in 1987, people were saying baby killers. They're still calling people in the military baby killer, okay? And they were thinking, one of the reasons they were thinking that is because they thought that they were part of the hippie culture. And this is the hippie culture back in the 60s and early 70s. This was a fairly peaceful culture. Look at the bottom right there. What you'll find, people, the flower children were actually putting flowers into the rifle barrels of the people who are in the military. And a lot of these people you see in this hippie culture, they're former military people who just, they're tired of the military thing and they wanted to get out and just relax and enjoy life. The hippies never hated the military people. The hippies always accepted the military people as being part of a bad situation that happened. So what this young girl didn't understand, what she thought she was doing, was she thought that she was doing something that was, joining a movement that was bigger than her. She's saying, oh, hey, I'm part of college now. I'm a 19-year-old girl. I'm in college. Oh, I'm going to call people in the military baby killers because that's what we do in college, right? Yeah, we protest the establishment and everything. That's not what hippies were all about back then. Okay, and nowadays people say, thank you for your service. Okay, so one of the reasons I'm saying don't say all kinds of horrible things about ICE, don't move against ICE. The people who work for ICE are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. They are performing a job that nobody else wants to perform, and they're doing a fantastic job. They're very professional, very caring, and they do what needs to be done. Just like when I was in the Marine Corps, the job wasn't necessarily an appetizing one. It wasn't a beautiful, wonderful thing. The Marine Corps is sent into a place to extend military power, political power into an area. It's not a wonderful, beautiful thing. It's not flowers and unicorn farts, but it needs to be done. So nowadays, people are saying, thank you for your service. Back then, they called me a baby killer. The people who work for ICE, you're saying all kinds of bad things about them. In a few years, you'll be saying thank you for your service to the people of ICE. So don't take it too far. If you don't like them, if you don't want to, just, allow them to do their job. Don't throw things at them. Don't curse them. Don't interfere with them. This thing that happened, this person was killed. And the reason this person was killed was because this person believed the propaganda, believed the rhetoric, believed all this stuff about ICE and standing up to the anti-ICE stuff. Don't believe the rhetoric. In 2 or 3 years' time, 5 years' time tops, you will be telling the ICE people, thank you for your service, the same way it happened for me. So yeah, support ICE. They're good people. They're doing something that nobody else wants to do. And support President Trump. Did I do this? Yeah, I did this right. Support President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. He's doing a great job, doing everything right. Tulsi Gabbard for president in 2028. I support her. I think she'll do that. I think she'll be a great president. And make America great again. I am a Republican, but I'm more of a Muskogee Republican. I make Oregon 6th Congressional District America's greatest congressional district. And sorry if it took too long. I'm over by about 8 or 9 minutes. But yeah, well, I had a bunch of stuff I wanted to cover. And like I've said before, the reason I make these videos is because there's who you are and what you are. What you are is everything about you that can be commoditized. Who you are is everything about you that isn't commoditizable. I want people to know what kind of person I am, what I am. A manufacturing engineer who's going to take a manufacturing engineer approach to government. Like I said before, I'm going to perform due diligence. I'm going to look past the hype, past the propaganda, past the marketing. I'm going to do everything possible to stay on the correct side of history, shape national policy in a way that conforms to our founding document, the Declaration of Independence. Try to get federal dollars to Oregon to help our infrastructure and create the laws for America that keep us on, like I said, on the right side of history. So that's pretty much all I have to do, all I have to say. And thank you very much for joining me. And God bless and take care.